All right, so you're in one of the financial capitals of the world, a room full of powerful people. We always wonder as Canadians how we are viewed abroad, particularly are we an attractive investment destination? Can we draw capital? What's the feeling you're getting? What are the conversations you're having?
I think generally it continues to be very positive. Canada is perceived to be still a good place to deploy money. As you know, the focus of the conference today is very much on the fixed income markets. And we've seen very strong demand from foreign investors into the Canadian fixed income markets for many years, but particularly this year. So we expect that to continue.
I'm curious if, obviously, we're following our own federal election very carefully on this side of the border, if you're having many discussions about that, if many questions are being asked. And I know that you were a signatory to a letter from the Business Council of Canada at the outset of the campaign saying we have some longer-term concerns about the Canadian economy and how we're going to grow it. Has this campaign shown you, have you heard promises that you say, okay, now I'm satisfied that the next government can address some of these issues?
Yeah, I think what the position of the Business Council is quite clear. I think we want to engage with whoever is in power after the election on October 21st, and then and have discussions on how, some suggestions that the Business Council could have for whoever will form the next government, and as importantly, some commitments that the business community, and particularly the Business Council of Canada, is willing to make to help make Canada a better place. So I think what we said we would do is we would engage after the election with whoever is forming the next government.
That seems to be a sensible approach, because when I think about elections, obviously a lot of the promises are short-term, but what you outlined in that letter is longer-term demographics. We have an aging population. Where's the growth going to come from? Where is our competitiveness going to come from? How big of a task is this then for the next government of Canada to take a look and say, we need to think beyond 3 or 4 years. We need to have a long-term plan for Canada?
Yeah, but I think we're building on some solid basis. I think, first of all, on the demographics, yes, it is aging, but we do have what most people would consider a successful immigration policy in this country. So our population is growing, unlike other countries in the G7 who have seen a net decline in population, or will shortly see a net decline in population. Ours is still growing. We have a very good and affordable educational system. So we have many things that we're already doing right. The question is, what can we do to take it to the next step? And I think the worst thing to do would be to take some of these things for granted. And I think what we want to do is to build on the solid basis for the future. I think that the suggestions that will come from the Business Council of Canada, I think will be on that.
Whoever forms the next government, it seems that energy policy is definitely going to be a hot button topic. I know the leaders of some of Canada's banks have said pipeline infrastructure is key. Where would you stand on the idea that we need to get more pipelines to Tidewater and get our product out to the world?
I think we have to see how we can go and do this. I think the current government is looking to at least a couple projects. One is NLG Quebec. And the other one is to reactivate a rail line in northern Quebec that could be used to transport oil and gas to a port on the east coast of Quebec to help alleviate the blockage right now that's costing so much money to Canada in terms of surplus of energy. So I think dialogue going forward is quite important. I'm quite encouraged that certainly at the provincial level, we sense that there's a much better dialogue between the different provinces who will have to work together on this front. So I think let's see what happens after the election. But I am encouraged by some of the better dialogues that we've seen over the last few months.
Housing affordability is a big issue as well. Everyone has their plan on how to address that. It is notable, though, that the latest numbers out from the Canadian Real Estate Association show that the markets are picking up again. So when we take a look at the stress test, we take a look at some of the other measures that have been taken by Ottawa already. Do we need to leave those in place? Are we in danger again of the housing market running away from us?
I think the macro-prudential policies that were put in place by the Canadian government the objective was to avoid a bubble in the housing market. And And by and large, I think that objective has been realized. I think has been met. I think we've had a slowdown, a soft landing in the housing market in Canada, not a crash that many people were predicting. So I think the so-called B20 rule has been put in place now almost a year ago. I think we need to get a little bit more time to go by to assess how it's impacting different markets in different parts of the country. And I keep repeating that all the time, especially to foreign investors. There is no such thing as the Canadian real estate market. The Canada is so big, there are big differences between what's going on in Vancouver, Montreal, and Toronto, or the western provinces. So you really have to look at different markets. I would give it a bit more time before making other macroprudential changes. But I think it's encouraged to see that Quebec is still doing well in terms of the real estate market, particularly Montreal. And Toronto and Vancouver, after a soft landing, are starting to move up again. That's understanding, because a lot of the new population growth in the country are concentrated in a few cities. So this is not abnormal to see strong housing demand in some markets.
When I think about the Liberal campaign promise about affordability, and it has to do with recognizing that Toronto, Vancouver, and Victoria are different markets, and perhaps this is about their home buyer incentive, but perhaps different rules should apply. It made me think, is it logical then to say, when it comes to the B20 stress test, we can recognize that Toronto, Vancouver, and Victoria are different markets, and maybe the stress test could be applied differently depending on the market? Does that make sense?
I think it may, under the circumstances. I think that will certainly be discussed over the next few months. The other question, which is an important question, is how do you create jobs outside of the major cities in this country? Housing is highly affordable in 95% of the country. So how do you get people to live and to work outside of the major metropolitan areas in the country? I think that would be also an important question to answer.